I just want you to know, because we want to be able to share this. There are several people who have contacted me since registering, saying that they were going to be unable to come to the session and hoping that there would be a recording. So just fair warning, and I think it was on the flyer too, but we want to be transparent. So I'm going to let Sarah, you take it away. Sorry, one more thing. We are going to keep videos on if you're comfortable, unless we get into some connectivity problems, in which case then we'll pause and say, turn your videos off. And choose whatever view you would like, speaker view or gallery view, so you can see all the beautiful faces. Okay.
Great. Thanks, and I'm going to be sharing my screen on and off. And so feel free to toggle around with your own so that you can, I do it all the time too. I'm always flipping through who else is here. So feel free to play around on your own side. And it's been a day, or it's been, what do they say? Oh gosh, it's been a week and it's only Tuesday, right? So if you need to take a break from your screen and do stuff, please, just breathe. It's all good. This is your time. So please make it as worthwhile for you as you want it to be and need it to be. So with that, I'm going to share my screen with you all. And thank you. Just thank you from the deepest parts of my soul for making time and space to be here for yourself, because that's really the audience we're talking about today, is each and every one of you and your colleagues and your teams and your the people in the trenches with you, the people that you supervise and care for, the people that you're training, if you're teacher trainers, counseling trainers, and so on, because this is for them. So in the chat, you can share with us who you are, what your role is, and if you are in a different state, please let us know. Or if you are from Massachusetts, where in the state you are from. But then give us the name of a song that gives you hope in the chat. Just the name of a song. Think of something that sparks some type of hope or resilience in you. And here we go. Oh, Jennifer, thank you for kicking it off. Jennifer's an art therapist in Atlanta, Georgia. And of course, the song that gives her hope is, I can see clearly now the rain has gone, right? There's a good one. You can just hear it as soon as you hear it, right? Oh, Martha, morning has broken. That's a good gospel hymn, right? All right. Let's see. No hard feelings from the Abbott brothers, student teachers in Wales. Fight song. This is my fight song, right? North Adams. Let's see. We've got a district literacy. This girl cooking on 3 burners and the Kunz. I don't know that one. I'm gonna have to find that one. Lesley, graduate chair education, and we've got. What's your song, Patricia? What's your song? Oh, I Will Survive. There it is. Okay, brilliant. Woo, what? Stronger by Kelly Clarkson. You got it. Mr. Brightside. Yep, Laura. All right, Joanne. This Girl is on Fire. I just sang that to my daughter the other day. She didn't think it was a real song. I said, no, that's a legit song. And then Alexa played it for us. Fabiola, what have you got? The song that gives you hope is Intentional by Travis Green. Anybody know that song? Thumbs up if you know that song. I don't know that song. I have to go find it. Oh, these are great. Lovely Day. Yes. Oh, lovely day today. Brilliant. New York City. Holy moly. We got people from all over the place here. Fall River. Another fight song person. Wow. We got preschool. We've got a lot of different roles too. My goodness. Oh, What a Wonderful World too. Just making sure I don't miss folks. New Mexico we mentioned. Lynn, I don't know a song that gives me hope, but I enjoy John Legend's song for an upbeat feeling. Walking Back to Happiness. I gotta brush up on my John Legend because I don't know all of his stuff, but I want you to keep thinking about songs that you've got. These are brilliant. Thank you all. Waymaker. Brilliant. And if you're so inclined, you will have these slides available to you as well. I did this at a PD, a similar opening at a PD at the start of the year with our staff. And one of the staff members decided that they were going to then, a way they were going to stay engaged was take every single song listed in the chat, turn it into a playlist on Spotify and share it with everybody. And so I then took that playlist link and put it here linked. And so I am not somebody who, I don't have a premium account, but they did. And so then they shared it with everybody. And even if you don't have a premium account, you can still access the playlist. So the link is here and you can go ahead and look at it. And it's brilliant. And Fabiola did the same thing, took all of the songs that their students said at the start of the year, and then used that as a playlist to have in the classroom, which is just brilliant SEL skills all over the place there, right? Oh, and You Will Be Found from Dear Evan Hansen. Yes. So think of this chat list as a beautiful playlist song of where your colleagues are grabbing their hope from and where perhaps we can also find some collective hope from. And what we can do is we can even save the chat and have a chance to hear from our colleagues as well. And maybe when we share it out with you, we'll have a little playlist to share back with you as well. Thanks all. If you think of other good songs, toss them in there too. Just a show of hands, how many of y'all felt a little bit lighter or brighter by thinking of your song? Just by thinking of your song. A little bit. Oh, I saw some hands go up. Even at the end of a long day, just being able to think of the song. You didn't even play it, but you just thought of it. I learned a really fun thing at one point, that there's something fascinating in our brain that continues to play a song, even if it cuts out. Our brain still actually hears it and continues to play it. So our brains are incredible, incredible machines and computers and all of that. So even when we just think of the name or pull it up, our brain puts the vinyl on, starts to play it, and we can hear the track playing, even though it's not on outside of our heads. So isn't that fantastic? Oh, two-step, Dave Matthews. Someone speaking my language, Michelle. Yup. Thank you. Oh, yes. Under the Table and Dreaming. Love it. So thank you for being here to everybody. We're going to have a little bit of time together, but it's going to be good. And really, this is going to be about us, about you. We spend so much time talking about for the good of the kids, for the good of the kids. And all of this is about the good of the kids. But we have to make sure we ourselves are healthy and well. And hopefully that's why you're all here. Please know I'm going to talk a lot about adults, and it's not coming from a place of neglect for the kids. Obviously, I get paid to work for kids, so I'm in it for the kids. But I'm also really, really passionate about the adults. And so we have to really normalize and embrace mental health for adults if we're ever going to do that for kids. We seem to speak out of two sides of our mouths. We seem to say, oh yeah, this is normal to talk about anxiety and depression and trauma when we're talking about kids. And then we turn around and we say, oh, did you see how bipolar so-and-so was acting? Did you see how difficult their life is going? They're really losing it. They're crazy. They're out of control. So we really have to start normalizing this for ourselves and for our adults. And yes, we have to see Fabiola's on the money. We have to put on our own mask, our own gas mask, right before we can even begin to think about putting on anything for our kids. Yeah, ooh, we will talk about that. Okay, so this is a common SEL practice that we do a lot in schools, but I'm going to use it with our adult space today as adults. Okay, so this is the mood meter. Show of hands if anyone's ever seen the mood meter before. Oh, a bunch of y'all have, but then I see another half of my screen has not. Okay, brilliant. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of it. The mood meter is a typical quadrant, mathematical quadrant. For those of you who are in preschool, I'll give you a refresher, okay? So this is the X and Y axis, and across the X-axis, you've got -5 to +5. And that's going to be asking you about your pleasantness level. How pleasant are you feeling today? Are you feeling super duper pleasant, like a +5? This has been the best day ever, and you are bouncing around. Is it a -5? You just want the world to swallow you up whole. Or are you somewhere in the middle, like a neutral 0? And then the Y-axis is going to be the energy. And that's going to be like, oh my gosh, I've had so many cups of coffee because I knew I had to stay up later today. And I'm like, zoom, 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 zoom all over the place. So now you're up at that 5, 5, 5. Or are you like, I had to get up so early and now I just want to pass out. And by the time this is over, the sun's going to be down and it's going to be pitch black and I'm just going to fall asleep. And you're down to that -5, or are you somewhere in the middle? And so what you're going to do is pick a number for your pleasantness, pick a number for your energy level, and those are your coordinates. And I'd love for you to take a second, check in with your body. This is me modeling, checking in with my body. All right, I'm going to say my pleasantness is at like a 4. And my energy level, I'll be honest, is a little low. There's nothing bad about that. It's the end of the day. I've had a really long day. And I haven't had any coffee today. I'm doing a cleanse. So there's no caffeine in this body. So I'm going to say my energy level is like at a -2. So that's going to be, my coordinates would be then a 4, -2. And that's what I will go ahead and put in the chat. Brilliant. That's me. Now I want everyone to check in with their bodies and do the same exact thing, but with your coordinates. And take a breath, because I bet you nobody's asked you today your pleasantness level. There we go. And you see some numbers coming in. The thing I love about the mood meter is it's just numbers. So arguably, it's a little easier for us to wrap our arms around the state of being. So now go ahead and plot yourself on the grid. So for me, 4, and then the -2 puts me right around here on the green. So if you can find where you are in the mood meter, what color would that make you? So Nancy, I'm just going to pick on you for a second because I just saw your numbers pop up. Nancy's a -2 in terms of pleasantness, but a +3 in terms of energy. 1, 2, 3. So that puts Nancy into the red quadrant. I was in the green quadrant. Let's see who else we've got here. I'm going to pick on Michelle, who is a 4 and then a 5. Michelle's in the yellow. And I don't think I've seen any blues yet. Okay. Angeliani is a -1 and a -1. That would be blue. So we have perfect. We have examples of all different colors today. We got some yellows, we got some blues. Yeah, perfect. So we got folks in all different places today. And all different places are good for different things. So those of us that are in the yellow, high energy and high pleasantness. Oh, before I even jump there, let me see. Is anyone going to be, this is my challenge by choice. Anyone want to take a stab at actually putting a feeling word at their number coordinates? This is hard. And I'm not being facetious. This is hard. Our emotional fluency is lousy, as adults even. Content. There's a word. Grateful. I would say for me, I can't even think of a good one for me. Excited, anticipatory, perhaps. Peaceful, hopeful, tired, but mellow, happy. Anyone struggling to find a good feeling word? So if I was Mark Brackett from Yale, the folks who came up with ruler, I would say things like tired and stressed and hungry, and they're not actually feelings words. They're state of being. They're actually biological needs and experiences. Feelings are things like, angry, joyful. So yes, body states. So it's really fascinating to see that even as adults, when we're trying to teach SEL, this is a perfect snapshot. If this is what we're trying to teach our kids, look at how difficult this is for us as adults to even name our own feeling states right now in the comfort of our homes, our offices, and quiet space where nobody's going to call us out on it. It's really hard for us to even name our own feeling states. And that's that's a really good moment for us to say we've got a lot of our own SEL work to do, in that if we're expecting our kids to be so robust with their feelings vocabulary, then we had better bulk up on our own feelings vocabulary, because we don't have a lot of examples to offer them. Does that make sense? Yeah. This happens everywhere. Even when you go to a group of counselors, when you go to a group of administrators, when you go to a group of mental health clinicians and you say, what are you feeling right now? They go, meh. They go, blurg. They give you all of these really interesting words that are not helpful. So that's a place for us to check in and to start. And for the mood meter, these colors are all really good for different things. So yellow is a really good space and time to say, hey, I want to collaborate and work with other people. Green is a really good place to say, I want to be reflective and I maybe want to do some reading or some growth on my own or some writing. Red is a really good space to be if you're ready to change the system, if you want to do some advocacy, if you want to use that passion and energy to change something that's not sitting right with you. Blue is a good time to be reflective and maybe do some reading or reflection on your own and do some solitary work or some research. And so there's nothing negative about being in the red or the blue. There may be some discomfort and unpleasant feelings, and you can choose if you want to move out of those different feeling states, but there's also different activities that are very well versed for them. If folks have seen Inside Out, you might recall when the main character was playing hockey and anger was taking over to help her use some of that aggression to move down the ice very rapidly to win, to get the shot. And so anger has a place, and anger is one of the feelings that's in red. So this is just a simple tool, something that we can use with our students and something that we should be using ourselves every day as an opportunity for us to ground ourselves in these feelings. So I'm going to take it off of this for a moment and talk about a skill called Name It to Tame It. So there's also a reason why we do this. And it's not just, okay, mood meter is another trick for everyone to have up their sleeves. But in the simple act of actually naming those emotions, trying to assess them and trying to put a name on them, we've just been able to do something. We were able to move out of our feeling part of our brain and up to our thinking part of our brain, right? And for those of you who've done any work in neuroscience or in how our brain works and working with our kids, it's a really great way to actually biohack our own biology and to say, look, we're going to short circuit and say, I'm going to ask you this question, which is going to get you to your reasoning brain. And simultaneously by doing that, it actually starts to calm down any dysregulation you might have been experiencing. It's going to get you to calm down any big emotions you've been feeling and start putting you in a place where you can actually rationalize about them. So naming it helps you to tame it. And by naming it, it's no longer this big nebulous feeling. It's something that you can actually begin to wrap your arms around. So this was not simply an icebreaker or something small. It's actually a neurobiological skill for us to use as adults to name and tame our own emotional state when we enter a space, to get us out of a dysregulated mind into a rational thinking mind so that we can then regulate our students. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second here and watch this magic. Let's see what happens here. Yes. I'm going to, believe it or not, push us into breakout rooms for 3 minutes. And I want you to think about how might you use or explain the concept of the mood meter or the name it to tame it, or that concept of even just increasing your own emotional fluency for adult health and well-being. Okay. And we're all in different settings. So this is very interesting. And there's only going to be about 3 or 4 of you in a group. So we'll have about 3 minutes or so. And just speak with one another spontaneously about what that might look like. Any clarifying questions on that? Brilliant. I'll see you shortly. All right, our three friends here. All right, Chelsea, Harriet, Marcia, do any of you need a room or are you just away from your computers?
I have to be away from my computer for a minute.
No problem. Just wanted to check.
Okay, thanks.
No worries, Harriet. Can't hear you, but I think you said the same thing.
And Chelsea? She must be away.
Yep, perfect.
Harriet and Marcia are they are professor emeritus, and they actually began the new teacher community, which is what inspired this series in the first place.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So some of these, it's just a really interesting group of people. Some of them are new teachers, some of them are veteran teachers. It's a whole wide mixture.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, and this is something that like none of these teachers learn any of this in service. Sorry, pre-service.
Right. Right. Although interestingly, yeah, I mean, I think it's coming in more, but not so much. It's sort of because we had a hard enough time getting people to figure out about discipline, like whatever that means. You know what I mean? That wasn't really taught in pre-service the way that it could be. So I'm glad that this is coming in before that, to tell you the truth. So
it's a big group. I just needed them to start talking to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah. You had a hard day?
Oh yeah, I get migraines a lot.
I'm sorry.
And this is on the recording, so hi everybody.
I'll stop talking.
No, that's okay. It's okay.
Right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
See, that's also my own self-awareness too. So, but it helps me to be able to name it. Got rooms in just a moment. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, and who's that with you, Nancy, in your photo?
That's my cute little mini schnauzer.
She looks very serious.
They have that very serious look. Yeah.
Where are you from, Nancy?
Well, I was living in Medfield for about 35 years, but we've relocated down here to Westport, Mass.
Oh, nice. That's beautiful there.
Yeah, it is.
We got our early jumpers coming back.
Mm-hmm.
That pop-up window goes up and they're like, back to the main room. Done. Brilliant. You got a few more seconds for the other groups who have a few more last words to say. I admittedly am the person in that room that watches that countdown and squeaks out every last second of that countdown clock in the breakout room. Brilliant. All right. Any good ideas pop up from folks? Great. So everybody's back now. Anything burning desire that we want to share with everybody in the larger group? Where's the genius that we want to amplify? It doesn't have to be your idea. You can put an awesome colleague on spot. You can put it in the chat too, and I'll say it out loud if that's easier.
I can speak. My name's Fabiola. I was in group 5, and I will shout out Hillary, who mentioned like in terms of the grid, we both have seen it before, but not in terms of like the number, more so with like emotions matching it. And in terms of using those type of things, we were talking in our group about how sometimes it might be more helpful to kind of cater it to whatever the theme is or basically the subject or the class. For instance, I gave an example. I'm a theater teacher and I teach high school theater. And so oftentimes I'll have different mental wallet check-ins at the start of class, and I'll give the students options of like, is it a Hamilton type of day or is it a Hamlet type of day? And then based off of their responses, I get to know how they're feeling or having different things as opposed to like that grid. For instance, we mentioned how the numbers, it might have thrown us off because it's like math and it's just like, even me as an adult right now, I've been on Zoom all day, which is why I don't have my camera on because I'm like in bed. But like that, I was like, that seems like a lot of work. I'm like, negative, am I -5? What? So sometimes having images or things that correlate with whatever the theme is might be more suitable.
Thank you. There have been a lot of folks who've made different variations on the theme, for sure. And I do know that some folks like to use it in terms of their units and such. So I've seen all different iterations of it, right? Some without any numbers, some with different emojis, and some with the kids generating words, or even taking characters from different stories and plays and putting them in different places, right? Like Hamlet would be blue, right? He would just be in the blue. Whereas Hamilton would probably be red most of the time because he's always trying to change things and fight things. And where would Burr be? Burr would be more like he doesn't want to change things. Aaron Burr, he would want to, I don't know, where would you put Burr, Fabiola? I'm trying to think. He doesn't like to cause a stir so much, but he would probably throughout the course of the play, he would change his colors based on his actions, See, and that
I was gonna say that. And then in regards to that, like technically speaking, Hamilton is a tragedy too. But the students seem to, in terms of different scenes of it, they'll be like, well, the upbeat scene where Eliza, and like, I love that song. And so it depends. It depends.
Well, I've seen some English teachers use this when they're using instruction to talk about even writing good stories and character arcs. And they'll talk about things like, okay, if you have a good story, there needs to be some kind of a climax in the red. And if you don't have anything in the red, there's no conflict, then you don't have a good story, right? Or if you have a character that doesn't have a hero's journey or doesn't go through all of this, then you don't have a good storyline. So that brings it all into like curriculum instruction in a whole different world. But I bring this slide up because I think you're 1,000% on point that like, yes, there are a million different ways we could use this and interpret it. I would think about for our space, just as an introduction to it, like, yeah, it's a good thing to reflect on, like, whoa, numbers are way too much for me at the end of the day to think about it. Absolutely. Oh yeah. And Jennifer was saying, don't like to identify feelings as negative, right? Like perhaps thinking about challenging or even just feelings, like feelings are feelings. Maybe the numbers are, I don't have a lot of energy, or I'm feeling negative energy, things like that. Yeah, but not the feelings. The feelings themselves are just feelings. It's what you choose to do with them. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is like, really, we have to, as adults, do this work so that we can start to destigmatize all of these conversations around social emotional learning, mental health, and well-being of staff, right? So I'm going to share some of the rest of the slideshow with you all and kind of give you a sense of, where we are as a field in terms of the health and well-being of our adults in the field. So I've got these three numbers here, 46%. Anyone have a guess of what 46% is? You can pop it in the chat. Or any of these numbers. 2 comes before 3 and roughly 75%. Anyone have a guess on what these might be? I like to put non sequiturs out there, get people thinking. I know, Fabiola, I give you more numbers though. Oh, bummer. Just after we said numbers are too much. 46% is the percentage of educators, teachers that responded they felt chronically burnt out and stressed in the most recent Gallup poll across the country when they were interviewing professions across the entire United States to see who was reporting chronic stress and burnout. Teachers were tied for first place if it was a competition in terms of coming in as the highest rates of chronic stress and burnout. This was in 2018. This was before the pandemic. Who were teachers tied for first with?
Doctors.
Close.
Dentists.
No.
Veterinarians.
Think less gratitude. Same amount of work, but less gratitude.
Nurses.
Yes, there it is. Nurses. Nurses and teachers were tied at 46% of the entire field across the US reporting chronic stress and burnout from being employed in their jobs. Higher than any other profession, higher than the air traffic controllers and the dentists and the lawyers and the doctors and all of that. And that was pre-pandemic. That is horrific. And that's why this is important, because Fabiola said it earlier, we have to put on our oxygen mask. If you turn to your left and your right in any staff meeting, in any teacher training, and you roughly cut our groups in half and you say half of us have passed out because we haven't put on our oxygen mask, that's a problem. Half of our field is incapacitated. Half of our field is not able to perform and to function and to show up and to be healthy because they are suffering and struggling. I mean, we talk about this and I could stand on a soapbox forever, but how do teachers approach this? We show up and we educators white knuckle it, counselors, social workers, they white knuckle it. They get sick. What do? They still show up. They've got a major issue in the family. They still show up because it's easier than writing subplans. It's easier than trying to explain Johnny's quirks and Susie's emotions and trusting, and trying to clean up the mess from when you get back, the emotional mess, not the room mess. I mean, that too, but it's so much easier to just white knuckle it through than it is to take a day and be home. But what that's the equivalency of is, no, I'm not going to put on my oxygen mask. I'm going to go through this aircraft and put on as many oxygen masks for everyone else as I can. How many people do you think the flight attendant gets to before they pass out because of lack of air? How many rows? If it's a, 757, what are there? 30 rows, 40 rows? I don't know much about planes.
One.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, you get to maybe one row and then you are passed out and incapacitated and you can't do anything else. And yet it is the norm of our field that's what's expected. And that if you put on your oxygen mask, there's something selfish and wrong with you. We got to flip that. We got to flip that terribly, because getting to one row is completely unethical. We have to put our mask on so that we can get to all of the rows. And that is not the way we operate right now. We never talk about caring for adults. And when we do, it's like the last dangling modifier of the sentence. And that's not the way our structures are set up. So the research that's coming out now says, hey, 2 comes before 3. That's my second line here. What does that mean? Castle has done a lot of amazing research on implementing social emotional learning in districts across the country, right? And I love it. I'm a little flip about this, but I do so intentionally. When they put out their research, they said, we talked about how important it is to implement all of this great programming and all of this wonderful work with our students, but we noticed something that was a big uh-oh. And this came out in the winter of 2019. They basically said, we noticed something in districts and buildings where we didn't do the SEL work with the adults, everything fell apart and we had to go back and start from square one and do it with adults again, or first, before it actually worked with the students. So we're actually going to amend all of our implementation practices in our research and say, you actually have to train adults first before you do any work with curriculum and integration and students. So yeah, staff come before students. 2 comes before 3. And everything now that Castle puts out endorses that, supports that, and talks about, yeah, we made a mistake. 2 actually comes before 3. And this is recent. I can't believe this is recent, but this is from 2019. So now you'll see in everything that they've put out, they stress that adults come before students. And there's really amazing research that talks about when they do mindfulness work. Oh, I'll tell you about that later. It's just so great. I get psyched about it. And the last piece here is roughly 75%, at least in my district, when we were surveying staff coming back to be hybrid in the fall, we were asking staff, like, you know, all of these things that could be going on in your lives, how many of you are dealing with something? And roughly 75% of our staff were dealing with something, if not multiple things. So when we talk about, you know, adverse childhood experiences for our kids, our adults were dealing with adverse living experiences, life experiences as well. And it was almost everybody. So we got to be realistic about the fact that we're talking about everybody, not just like the 1 or 2 staff members who are obvious about it and upfront about it. We're talking about everybody. Everybody's got something going on. So these numbers are very, very important to me, and they should be very important to us, because we're not talking about just a few people, we're talking about everybody. I just want to pause here and ask folks if they have any reactions or any reflections to any of this information, any thoughts that it's bringing up. They can put it in the chat. They can unmute themselves. Got a good.
You know, Sarah, I was just thinking the only place I actually have run across as an adult where somebody really pushes you to take care of yourself first is if you're caring for a loved one who is ill, right? They always say the caregiver will burn themselves out. And that's about the only space where where that's kind of normalized. It's interesting, and it has to do with like serious and chronic illnesses, like this really extreme situation, and it's just intense for me to think that that's the only time that someone is said you got to take care of yourself in order to do this work.
It's a good observation. I think about the nurses and the certain protections that they have on. There's only X amount of hours they can work in a week, and there's strict rules around they can't have certain shifts in a row, and they have to get certain amounts of hours of sleep in between because of protocols, health protocols, and because of safety protocols, and so on. And I think to myself, if they're as stressed and burnt out and they have all of these protective protocols around it, it makes me wonder about educator self-care protocols. It makes me wonder, where are the protocols around group supervision? You know, they have medical rounds, they have supervisory rounds, they have medical regulations that are imposed upon them for the best of the field. What about educators? You know, where's their time to get together and do educational rounds? Where's their time to get together and talk about student needs, and to talk about, did you get your required hours of sleep and rest and rejuvenation between your next 12-hour shift, and so on? I'm very fascinated by that. And I wonder, how do we build spaces and opportunities for that for our colleagues? So these are the major findings that I basically just talked about. But for those of you who want to, if I talk too fast for you, or you want to be able to come back and look at them, you absolutely can. This is the science around it too then. Like, when teachers are highly stressed, it impacts their students directly. Students show lower levels of social adjustment and academic performance. That's massive. This isn't just, oh, I want to feel good when I go to work. We know that students are directly impacted. There is an amazing study out of the University of British Columbia that found they swabbed for saliva and cortisol in their students. And when teachers were taking self-reported surveys of how stressed am I feeling, they found a direct correlation between the cortisol in the students' surveys as samples and the survey responses of the teachers. So when the teachers responded that they were feeling heightened, the student cortisol levels were heightened. And that to me is this moment of, oh my gosh, our stress is contagious. It's this moment of, yes, it is a legitimate impact on the milieu in the area. You know, we know it when we walk into a conversation in a room. Even if you heard nothing, you walk in and you go, whoa, I can cut the air with a knife. Something is going on in here. And our kids are absorbing that. And I want to be really clear. I've said this before in a group, and I've had a group of very highly empathetic teachers who've immediately gone, I'm ruining my kids. And I want you to breathe for a second and go, no, because they also absorb all the good stuff that you're giving them. So please, this is not a moment for you to feel like every minutia of emotion you feel, they absorb. It's a moment for us to feel an obligation to care for ourselves, because they will also absorb when and how we care for ourselves. When we take a moment and we say, hold on, it's gotten really loud in here. Miss Bird can't do her best thinking when there's so much noise. I need us to take a moment and take a breath. We're also modeling that adults need regulation too, and adults need space and breath, and they absorb that. We also model and say, like I had said to you earlier, I shared my true, authentic numbers on my mood meter. I said I was having a long day because it's normal. Even though this is what I study and this is what I do, I still get headaches. I still have lousy long days, right? That's okay. I need to make space for it and normalize it. There's nothing wrong with it, because it's important for us to make space and model for our kids as well, right? And so that's what they learn. And that's the important piece of it. So I don't want you to walk away from this going, oh my gosh, they're going to catch everything, all my bad habits. They're also going to catch all your good habits. So lean into those, okay? This is phenomenal. This came out of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And this is going to look at overall in the field, how educators want, how we feel. And in March, when everything shut down, they did a survey with about 6,000 educators through their Castle Cares webinars, and they found that this is how educators were feeling. And you can see the words that really pop out. It's the one on the left. Mostly things like anxiety, fear, uncertainty, feeling stressed and worried and overwhelmed. And then at the end of the summer, they asked the question on the right, how they anticipate they're going to be feeling in the new school year. You're finding a lot of similarities, right? There are some things in there, some excitement, a little bit of happy. So there's a little bit of that. But then I like this next one. They ask educators, okay, how do you want to feel? This is how we want to feel. We want to feel confident. We want to feel excited. We want to feel energized and hopeful and safe and supported. This is a reasonable list. This isn't hard to feel excited about something and confident. Do you notice it doesn't say like, I want to feel highly successful and filthy rich? You know, it doesn't say any of that. It just says, I want to be excited about what's coming up, less in the dark and confident. Like I want to know what's coming up and I want to feel excited about these things. And so that's really important when I think about the brain and how we take care of ourselves. I'm actually going to slip to this next one for a moment. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, it went straight to my video. That's why I did it. Sometimes the slides are just too good, huh? Okay. I want to show you this slide. We've all heard about flight, fight, freeze, right? This is a very common concept for folks. I want you to take a look at this little graphic here and just to notice something, that a lot of those feelings that teachers are feeling in the midst of the pandemic and then anticipate when returning to school are in the flight and fight area of our sympathetic nervous system response, right? That fear, that anxiety, that frustration, that worry, and that concern, that's all in that sympathetic nervous system. And then when you saw what people wanted to feel, that confidence and that excitement, those are pieces, those feelings, that connection, that safety, those are down in the parasympathetic nervous system. Once you get to social engagement and once you've come out of that sympathetic response, right? So there's a very interesting concept here about how we care for ourselves, and that even if we can't control the situation around us, if we can impact our parasympathetic nervous system, we have a really strong chance at being able to move ourselves away from experiencing anxiety, concern, and worry, and start to increasing the instances that we're able to feel grounded and present and grateful and connected and confident. So thinking about what's in our locus of control, like what we are able to control versus what other people are in control of around us. And we're pretty aware of the fact that we're not in control of anything pandemic wise right now. And if you were to ask any of your administrators, like, what are we doing in the fall? A, do they know? B, would you trust it even if they told you? No. Okay. I'm saying that even as an administrator. Nope, exactly. So to put any confidence or excitement stock into those answers is foolish, right? They're doing the best they can, but it's foolish to do that, and we know that. So if we're looking for excitement or confidence, it's got to be coming from within, and it's got to be coming from things that are within our realm of influence, things that we actually can control. So that's what I wanted to bring to our attention today and see if we can share a little bit about that. Just checking my time here. Okay. So is anybody, just to review this, I'm actually going to share a video with you to give you a little break from my voice and to introduce you to somebody who I find really awesome. His name's Dr. Bruce Perry. If you have taken any of the trauma courses at Lesley, you may have heard about him because we use one of his articles on the cost of caring in our first course through LIFTS. And he talks a lot about secondary trauma, compassion fatigue, the impact that caring for students with adverse childhood experiences has on those caretakers. So a little bit, Marianne, to your point of the only place you've ever seen really cognizant care for caretakers has been in those situations. He goes a step further and talks about you may not even realize it or recognize it, but that vicarious trauma is also present in education because we are caring for students and children with adverse childhood experiences 24/7. Even as teachers, this isn't relegated to therapists and counselors and social workers. This is teachers. So he's a fantastic person on that front to become familiar with. And I want to share with you some insights he has around state-dependent functioning. Hopefully this will be a little validating for you individually, but to also understand what it's like to be working in the pandemic. I shared this with my colleagues back at the start of the school year. And we also talked about this in light of what to expect when your kids walk through the doors or they show up in your Zoom rooms, what to expect from your colleagues and from your families, and how you should have some radical grace and acceptance for yourself and for all human beings that you're going to be interacting with over the next X months. And so, because our brains operate very differently when they're in different states of functioning. And one of the major things to think about when taking care of adult SEL needs is to really understand that a lot of what we are experiencing as burnt out and exhausted, stressed educators is so much because of how our brains function. And this is why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. So hopefully this will be a bit of a balm to the soul for us to sit there and go, oh my gosh, I feel seen. So I'm going to let him take it away. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but the link is available for you all within the slides when we're done. I'm going to start it around minute 6 or so, and then I'm cutting it off too. So yeah.
Really monitoring our world. We've got sensory apparatus that are hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, all the things that are going on in our world, and sending that information into the brain so that we can decide how to appropriately turn on or off systems that help us match the moment. And we also have incoming input from our bodies. So the lower parts of our brain, where these core regulatory networks originate, are continually getting information that monitors your internal state and it monitors the external state. And when there is any incoming information that suggests that you are potentially under threat, the brain can basically recruit systems that it needs to meet the moment. You know, let's get your body ready to move. Let's increase your heart rate. Let's mobilize, make your muscles get ready to act. And let's shut down parts of the cortex that are sitting around contemplating, you know, the meaning of life. Because right now, when there's a saber-toothed tiger pacing outside my campfire, I don't need to think about the future of humankind. I need to think about the moment. Now, this is one of the great capabilities and important elements of state dependence. Your brain has the capability to get input from all of these sensory domains and tell you whether you're safe and tell you if you're regulated, you have enough food, you have enough water. And if you're in an environment where you're safe and it's a familiar environment and there's no significant need that's unmet, you can use this really smart part of your brain and you can be inventive and creative and reflective. And this is one of the great characteristics of our species. Now, what happens, however, is that when you start to get threatened and you feel as if your body is challenged, you start to change the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you behave. And this is a reflection of state-dependent function. And the more threatened you get, the more you shut down the thinking part of your brain, the more you become reactive. And this is a really important point, because what you'll find is that people who are under a lot of duress, who become increasingly anxious and activated, they also become increasingly less rational. And sometimes their solution to the current problem will be what you and I would call irrational. And so, or overly emotional, overly reactive. And so this is something that many of you, I think, have seen, maybe in your families or in your workplace or in watching things on the media. A key thing about the current situation, and it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that, you know, we have these systems that can basically recruit and activate all of our body and brain and prepare us for threat. And so what happens, one of the first things that happens is that you become externally focused and vigilant, and maintaining vigilance for a long time actually is emotionally and physically draining. And activating, making your body sort of be ready for threat all the time for a long time, it exhausts your body too. And one of the key things that we're going to see in this current pandemic is emotional and physical exhaustion. People will not be able to do as much work during the given workday that they normally did. Students will not be able to learn as rapidly or as efficiently as they had in the past. And this is really an important thing to be aware of, and to be really gentle with yourself and with others. And I would recommend even proactively decreasing your own workload in anticipation of exhaustion, because it's a lot better to proactively and intentionally decrease what you have to do than to say you can do something and expect yourself to do it and fail and then beat yourself up and let other people down. So it's important that we are proactively anticipating less effectiveness.
So everybody laughed at me when I shared this with families and staff. And I said to them, you would all be very wise from the start of the year to cut back your schedule and your expectations by at least a third. By at least a third. To sit down and say, whatever you think you can accomplish, cut it back. Whatever you think you can have on your plate, cut it down, because your brain and your body do not have the capacity and the fuel to get it done this year. And so, and then of course for teachers, they're like, but what if the upper level people won't let me do that? Then I say to them, give yourself, you know, the prioritization hierarchy, and then decide what things you can afford to half-ass. What kinds of things can you afford to just get done, but they don't have to be done beautifully? Because sometimes there's this fun website or group called the Cult of Done, right? Sometimes deleted is done. Sometimes a draft is done. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be finished. And so setting those boundaries for yourself and being able to say, I have to do this for my own brain health is really important. So there is a reason for why everybody is so fatigued, and do give yourself and your team the challenge or the permission or whatever it is that's necessary to say, your kids and you don't have the capacity to do as much volume as you could before. So volume's not the answer. You got to find a different way and cut back on volume.
Now, let's walk through this a little bit more.
So
here's our simple brain heuristic.
He's going to flip it into a chart, which is awesome.
Tables to show how people move and change their functioning as they go up the arousal continuum. And so let's start right here. If you are calm and you are not threatened in any way and you have no demands on your attention, and you can be reflective and abstract. And the truth is, this is a state that not a lot of us spend too much time in, because most of us are pretty busy. You know, we're overscheduled. We've got, you know, our phone's always going off. We're watching television. And so we're always kind of in this semi-alert state. And if we get into the high alert state here, our behaviors start to shift. We're not really creative. We can certainly take in new information, but we are not really manipulating it in creative ways. We're just kind of putting it in our head and storing it for later. Now, one of the traditional behaviors that it takes place when you start to feel yourself escalating is that you're going to basically flock. And what flock means is that in an active alert state or a low alarm state, your brain looks to the relational milieu. It looks to the other people in the room, the other people that you're around, your friends, your family, your coworkers, and you look at, did you hear that the same way I heard it? How are you handling the situation? And we are very contagious to this social milieu. And flocking is something that a lot of you probably caught yourself doing by watching the news in excess and calling this friend and that friend and reaching out and getting the same piece of information through 5 different people. And it's a very, you know, it's a very normal thing to do, but it also is indicative, if you catch yourself sort of flocking, it's indicative that you're getting dysregulated. And I think it's something to be aware of. And you're certainly going to see it in lots of people that you work with. Another key characteristic of sort of moving down.
So think about that for a quick moment. And think about the fact that our echo chambers, right? When things aren't going the way that we want, or when something doesn't feel right or comfortable, what do? We go to a colleague, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Oh, we pick up our phones in the middle of meetings that are not going well, and everybody's head does this on the Zoom. And everybody starts to look down and starts texting on the phone. I do it all the time. And that's that moment when it's like, okay, I'm getting dysregulated because something just happened that I'm not a big fan of. And I'm looking for my people to flock to that I can then talk with about something. And he makes a joke at one point, like everyone went out and bought toilet paper at the beginning of this because they were flocking to say like, oh no, we have to do something in the pandemic. So it's that moment of like the conversations in the parking lots, the conversations on social media, the conversations in any kind of little pockets of echo chambers. They're not inherently bad because we're connecting with people and with community. But what they are signs of is that we are beginning to become dysregulated. We no longer feel safe. There's something about the situation that makes us feel like we need to find safety by flocking to others. And you also notice we're never flocking to others that we are going to have a contrary point. We're always flocking to others that are going to say, yes, exactly. And so that's something for us to also notice and to be gentle with ourselves and say, ooh, this is me trying to find safety. How can I also care for myself? Or if you see your colleagues doing it, to be compassionate to that and to say, or if you see your staff doing it, if you're a supervisor, to not feel attacked that, oh my gosh, they're coming and they're attacking me, or they're really avoidant of this thing that I just talked about, but to say, oh, they're feeling threatened, they're feeling scared by something, they're not feeling safe by something, and this is their reaction. He talks about it a little bit right here.
Or moving up the arousal continuum, is that your sense of time begins to collapse. So again, over here, when you're reflective, you can think about the future. When you kind of get into this active alert state, you're really concerned about your next appointment, the next phone call, the next Zoom conference you're going to have with people. And when you get really threatened, your sense of time literally collapses. Now, the reason that's important is that one of the things that human beings are really good at is thinking about the consequences of their behavior. What's the consequence of making a new rule in your organization? What's the consequence of going to the grocery store and buying 3 months worth of toilet paper? That impulsive behavior really has consequences for other people, and it is basically kind of an irrational move. So there's lots of examples of irrational behavior that takes place when people are in this alarm state. And one way to think about it is essentially that the further you escalate up, the more you basically have what we call state-dependent regression. You act less and less and less like an adult and more like a child. And sometimes you can get to the point where you regress to the point where you're completely self-referential. You don't care about anybody else. You just care about your comfort. You want your needs met and you want them met now. And you are petulant. You're hard to reason with. You're emotional and reactive in the way you do things. And that's basically a regressive manifestation. And it's again, those of you who know much about the brain or brain development, know the brain develops from the bottom up. And as you go from the top up and you develop cortical capabilities, your cortex gets stronger, you develop executive functioning capabilities, and you're able to be like a mature adult. But the more you get threatened, the less access you have to your cortex, and the more you basically functionally regress. This is something that you're going to see in a lot of the folks that you are interacting with under these current.
So think about families who are reaching out and saying, why aren't you moving heaven and earth for my child? Why aren't you moving everything and changing all of the legal rules and regulations? And can't you make a way for just my kid? That's where they're at, because obviously we need to focus on what's best for their kid and their family, and their heart's in the right place, and they're stressed out and they're worried about what's going to happen to their kid. Absolutely. I had a moment like that about my kid, and it took me like a day or two to come out of that bubble and to go, boy, was I feeling threatened. But yeah, absolutely. It happens to all of us. When you're talking about the consequences of behaviors and decisions for organizations, you get folks in all different levels of schools making decisions about programs and policies and early releases and all these other things, but people making decisions and not necessarily being in a place in this process where they're vetting it by teachers, by families, by everybody. They're making emergency decisions right now, and we're feeling that collapsed sense of time. So not everybody is understanding or thinking about next month, next year, so a lot of these things, I'm hearing a lot of teachers going like, did they even think about how that would impact us in the classroom? Did they even think about how it was going to impact our curriculum? Did they even think about X, Y, and Z? And sometimes no, because they were just thinking about that day, or they were just thinking about that month. They weren't necessarily thinking future. And so hopefully this is a good context with which to think about this. And then you've also can see, when you look at this last piece here, that you've got colleagues and perhaps yourself thinking about Okay. Some of us are just like in avoidance. Nope. I'm just going to ignore it. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. If I ignore it long enough, it won't be a thing, right? Like, cause in education that happens a lot. If I don't do it and if I drag my heels, it'll just fade away, right? Because that's with every initiative. If I ignore it long enough, it'll go away. Compliance, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I don't care. Just give me the form or tell me what to do. I'll just click the buttons and I'll be done with it. I don't care. Or the dissociation of like, I'm going to ignore it. And if you find I've got tenure, the union will protect me, whatever the case is. So if I'm delinquent on it, you tell me whatever, and I'll just get it in once you prod me and poke me about it, but I'm not going to be on top of it. You'll just tell me when I need to do it and I'm going to check out basically. So hopefully this example here was, let's see if I can get out of this one here. Yeah. This example of this video is a good opportunity for folks to see and to understand what state dependent functioning looks like and manifests in us. So I'm going to pause for, well, I'm going to end with this piece here, and then I'm going to have us chat with ourselves. How's that sound? So this is Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. Has anybody seen this model of the brain, taught it to kids? I see a hand. I see one hand. All right, just one? Just one person? All right, so that means that, that means that I'm gonna have to give you a quick little snapshot of it. So Dan Siegel has this really handy model. And it's great, big handy, haha, that was a pun and I didn't even realize it, but now it's gonna be forever indelible on my brain. And so everybody can hold their hand up. This is your brain on your hand, it's amazing. So think of your wrist and this part as your brain stem. This could be your spine, right? If you really want to extend it. But that's exactly it. This is your brain stem, and this has like all of your survival things. So your breathing, your heart rate, all the stuff that keeps you pumping, all the stuff that you're not really thinking about. Okay. And now the limbic area is going to be your thumb. You're going to kind of tuck it in there underneath, because this is that part of your brain here. Well, I can't, my hair is all in the way, but like it's that nice big chunky part inside, inside of the brain and all that nice gray matter. And so that you just tuck your thumb in, and that's the limbic area where all of your fight, flight, like your safety radar is to be when you're kind of scanning rooms and you get that sixth sense of something's off or not, and your big emotions. So this is where all of your emotional turmoil lives, right? And then you've got your big fat part of your brain, that's the prefrontal cortex, and you wrap it over on top. And then you can see by the side, I can show you, I don't know why I keep twisting here. You can see it from the side that it looks like a little brain, right? You kind of have that nice brainy shape where you can see the curvature of the gray matter and stuff on the top. You've got the little piece on the inside, and you've got your stem. Okay. So this is your brain model on your hand. You always have it with you, which is really handy. And what you want to explain to kids or even teenagers, and frankly, adults love it too. What we want to explain to folks is that these different parts of our brain have these different functions. And when we are in these different states, right, just like Dr. Perry was just talking about, we have limited access to different parts of our brain. And ultimately, when we are stressed out and we are in fight and flight, we flip our lids. The lids of our brains flip off. Ultimately, the prefrontal cortex goes offline. And all we have available to us is our brainstem and our limbic area and our amygdala in here too. So all we have available to us is our animal brain and our big feeling brain and our fight flight response. All of the good thinking, like making decisions, reading social cues, being able to decipher more elegant thinking, weighing pros and cons, thinking about cause and effect and perspective taking, all of that's offline. That's all up here in the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, right? That's all gone. It's literally like when your computer boots you off the internet, there's nothing you can do about it. You're just off. You can't like will it back on. It's off. What do you have to do when your computer boots you off?
Reset.
You have to reset?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Turn it off and turn it back on.
Back on.
Oh, yeah. How do you do that with your brain?
Like take a moment to refocus.
I like this, Deirdre. You got it. Yeah. That's exactly, we have to resequence our brains, just like we have to resequence a computer. It's the same exact thing. So my father's in IT and a bunch of other IT folks said this too. When your computer needs to reboot, it's because you have too many different tabs open, right? Or you're running too many programs. You need to shut down the tabs, shut down the operating system, and then shut down the hardwire, turn off the power source, right? And then what happens? Pretty much every time that you reboot, it resequences. You turn on the power source, you turn on the operating system, and then you reopen your programs. It's the same exact thing with our brains. So that is where we get to the 3 R's. This is how we resequence our brains. We have to regulate our brains and our bodies. Then we have to relate to our environments, to the people that we're near and working with or around us, wherever we are at that moment. And only then can we reason and engage again. To do that, it's quite simple. We did the mood meter earlier, and that was a very simple way to regulate, to relate to one another, and that primed us for being able to reason. Other ways that we can do that are using breathing exercises, are moving physically, doing a mindfulness exercise, doing any kind of body sensory regulation. There are tons of opportunities for this, but anything that regulates us, then transitioning into any kind of a relational connection, which could be, would you rather? Would you rather breathe underwater or talk to animals? Put it in the chat. Would you rather breathe underwater or talk to animals? Let's see. What do people want? Breathe underwater for Laura. Talk to animals for Fabiola. So hard to choose. Deirdre, gotta pick something. Talk to animals. Ooh, we got a lot of animal talkers. I wonder if those people have pets. I picked breathe underwater. A lot of animals. Ooh, see, this is a deeper discussion. So now we have some very interesting questions that have popped up in my mind. I'm sure all the animal talkers want to talk to each other too. And I got nobody else who wants to breathe underwater with me, Michelle. Okay. Fascinating. So there's a little bit in 2 seconds, we've just had an opportunity to relate to one another. Okay. So we're also resequencing our brains in that small moment. And then we can do some more. It's very simple to resequence our brain, but that's how we do it. And it's fascinating for us to think about any moment that we go into an adult space now. In Arlington, what we strive to do is to practice the 3 R's. So every time that we start an adult space, we have an opportunity to regulate, to relate before we start our agenda, because we're assuming that nobody is coming in regulated and related. That's the assumption. I can guarantee you I'm not coming into any space regulated and related. So that's something that we're approaching every single time that we come into an adult space. Hopefully, by using this, we're helping to coach all of our educators to come out of the sympathetic nervous system and to come into the parasympathetic space, so that as we're having these spaces in our work, we're moving away from that anxiety and that fear and into present, into groundedness and connectedness with one another. So we're hopefully creating, it's not perfect, but we're creating more opportunities to experience confidence, excitement, groundedness, connectedness. It's not to say the experiences of anxiety aren't there, but we're hoping to create more experiences of the pleasant and more social engagement opportunities by doing that. Okay, I'm going to skip these for a second and say, by doing this, we're also striving to help do something with a very unpredictable, stressful situation, right? So we mentioned this a little bit earlier, that a lot of this is out of our control, right? So the pattern of stress that we have here is the one to the left. It's unpredictable, it's extreme, it's prolonged. And it's going to be very easy for us to become sensitized to this, which makes us vulnerable. What we want to strive for is cultivating resilience and tolerance. And we can't really make our stress situation one that is moderate or one that's controllable. So what can we do around it? We can put some of these routines and some of these structures around it to make it a bit more predictable in the way that we respond to it. So do we know every meeting we're going to start with this 3 R's opportunity? That's something that's predictable. That's something that I control. Do we know that every time that we end the week, we'll have a gratitude practice? That's something that's predictable that I can turn to. Do I know that every time that my team gets together and we find ourselves flocking, someone's going to call us on it and we're going to check in with each other? That's predictable. That's going to help move us to resilience as opposed to sensitization, right? So there are just even understanding the difference between what's going to make us vulnerable to this versus what's going to help us build resilience to this is going to be really powerful to have that knowledge, and then to know that you don't have to wait for anybody to give you permission. You don't have to wait for anybody to change the system. You can do all of this today. I mean, not today. It's going to be late. The sun's already down. Tomorrow. You can do this tomorrow. Okay. So those are the 3, right? Regulate and then relate, and then you can reason. And even if you just do it yourself, you'll feel better yourself. And starting there, people are going to notice and they're going to be like, why do you have it all together? What's going on? What are you doing? Is it that new matcha latte or something like that? And you say, nope, it's the 3 R's. The other thing to think about is that the way that you can get to regulate is inside or externally, outside, right? So you can do things internally, such as listening to your heart rate and breathing and doing guided visualizations and so on. But you can also do things externally. So runners always talk about how great running is. There's something really wonderful about running is you have this constant beat. And there's something about the rhythmic sensory input that's also very healing and restorative. So those of you that are here that are from the expressive arts, you'll also be able to speak to that, because even being able to do repetitive art, whether it's small pictures or even printmaking with lithographs, and being able to just do small wood carving and little pieces that are repetitive, things that are outside external sensory pieces that are repetitive. They could also be physical activities like running, dancing, musical, drumming, anything that is a sensory input that is rhythmic and repetitive is found to be really good for regulating as well. It syncs up with the body's internal rhythm. We shared these 2. And then we've also talked about some mindfulness. There's tons of resources, which I'm sure you all have, as Lesley has an awesome mindfulness program. But there's also many that are free and available to educators. So I'd recommend, if you're looking for some others, to just seek and ye shall find. I've also got a ton in the slides that you can look at. And there's this also a fantastic link that's in the slides on how other ways and suggestions on cultivating resilience through healthy habits. Healthy habits that you might not have thought about. Sleep hygiene is something that we all kind of nod at and then go about our day. I mean, I found something as simple as putting on a sleep mask has really helped me to stay asleep, especially with the snow reflecting light in a lot earlier in the day. That's been really great. I have little ones, so they get up super early, but that's helped me really a lot. And then some even other things like writing down your food tracking, just to know that you're getting enough hydration, and food plans and things. Giving yourself permission to feel. So just like a number of you mentioned earlier, feelings are not negative. They're just feelings. They're information. They're really powerful. We have feelings for a reason. They're letting us know that something that we need to respond to or be aware of. And so giving ourselves permission to tap into that and to be aware of that And if we have a mindfulness practice, all the better, because that's a space for us to contain it and respond to it. But if we're anxious, it's because there's something that we feel that we don't have the capacity to respond to. And if we're overwhelmed, it's because there's something that we feel we would like to be able to do, but we don't have the bandwidth. And so anxiety and overwhelm are a little different. So if we could sit with both of those feelings and unpack them a little bit, dive in a bit deeper, and then figure out what we need to gift ourselves so that we can maybe get the learning that we need to be less anxious, or get the experience or the practice, then maybe we'll feel less anxious. And for the overwhelm, if we could share the load with somebody, or piece out the work so it doesn't feel as overwhelming, or just have somebody else do it, that could be good too. But if we just push those feelings aside, we never actually address what's causing that feeling. So the feeling is telling us something, and we owe ourselves the honor of paying attention to it. Because just like we say to our kids, oh, we got to test your temperature before you come in to make sure it's not a flag for something that might be there, our feelings are flags too. So we need to pay attention to what might be there, and make sure that it doesn't turn into something else. And then connecting. If you are stuck in your head, you're dead. So make sure that you also get out of your head and get out to others in your community. Connect with others, do something for others. Write a Valentine's card to somebody that you haven't talked to in a bit, like little itty bitty things. It'd be awesome. And let's see, the last slides, because this talks about making meaning. And I want to show folks that some of the really nice pieces about this is knowing whenever you go through something difficult, if you're able to make meaning from it, it is a huge protective factor. It is a huge way to care for your own mental health and well-being and your own SEL needs. So these two images, anybody, well, hopefully you can guess, anybody have a guess for what the two images are representing in terms of making meaning?
Rock's ability and rising like the phoenix.
There you go. What was the rocks?
Ability,
Oh, okay.
grounding, being grounded.
That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. I didn't think of that, but I like that you took meaning from that. I was thinking of, you know, how the rocks, oh, being stuck between a rock and a hard place. Oh, that's an interesting one. I put it in there thinking about how the water, the rough waters rushing over jagged rocks, eventually over time smooth out the rough edges, right? And become really smooth, beautiful gemstones or smooth rocks. And I think that it is a beautiful image. If that is something where you feel like all of the different hardships that have come over this time have helped you with different lessons or opportunities, perhaps for you, some meaning making is, yeah, this has really smoothed out some rough things or different opportunities. And I am just being, you know, refined and washed away, just like the rocks at the bottom of the river, right? Other folks love the image of the phoenix, and they look at this and they go, oh, it's tearing me down. It's burning me. I am crushed. I am totally broken, but I am going to rise up. And from these ashes, I don't even know what it's going to be, but I guarantee you it is going to be epic, right? So meaning making gives you chills to think about. You don't even need to know the what next, but just to know that what is happening right now has meaning, because there is something happening. There's a process happening that everybody is undergoing. It's this collective experience, and that meaning making transforms the stressful experience of something that's happening to you. It becomes something that's happening for you. And having that sense of purpose, connecting to your purpose, why you're here for your kids, why you're here for your colleagues, it transforms everything. So I also offer that to you all, in that, again, it's something that's within your control. You don't need to wait for the upper echelon folks to make decisions or do things that change. But this is something that you can go to bed and say, yep, I'm a phoenix. I'm not going to be, I am a phoenix, or it's the rocks. I am that rock. And oh my gosh, I am going to be brilliant and smooth by the time this is over. And every time a wave hits you, you can like feel the next wave, because the hits just keep coming, don't they? And next time the hit comes, you can sit there and almost smile and go, ooh, this is a tough one. I wonder what's going to come from this one, So these are really beautiful. And these are all research-based too. This isn't just me saying, I want to make people smile. That folks who have purpose and meaning making in tough times are resilient. They cultivate resilience and they become less sensitized to toxic stress over time. Okay. And yeah, hopefully really good things to take from this. So the other resources that are here for you are some things that I've used in our district, but I also offer for folks. We use something called Wise at Work. It's an app. It's a mindfulness app, but there's also Insight Timer, which I love because it's free and they have so many different options. And Calm is a great one. Headspace is a great one. We use the 3 R's as just our basic framing of it. The SEL3 are the basic practices of a warm welcome, an engaging middle, and then an optimistic closure. If you go to the Castle website, you'll find many workbooks on those 3 practices, and you can incorporate them. I'm not even talking about kids here. All of these things I'm talking about are for adults, right? If you start using those 3 practices in any adult-facing spaces that you're in, you just start with an SEL warm welcome for yourselves, and then you promise to engage one another in the time you spend together, and then an optimistic closure. Things are going to feel lighter. You're going to feel seen. And that's the SEL we need to do with one another. I also have a link to our district SEL plan in Arlington, which has a whole section 2, because 2 comes before 3, right? Section 2 is all about the adults and all the different things we're doing for adults. So you can dive in deeper there. Use your employee assistance program. And we also have Interface, which is a mental health referral hotline out of William James College. A number of different communities have that, but you also will find links on the next slide for a self-assessment and for recommendations for self-care. So I'll show you that shortly. STS is the staff of secondary traumatic stress, and for adults, SEL for adults, I think Resilience, the STAT program. It's basically, if you want to dive deeper into secondary traumatic stress on adults, this STAT program is a course that's online, that's free for teachers, all about secondary trauma. And it's really lovely and helpful. It's dense. There's a lot of great information there. But if that's something that will bring you joy right now, go for it. Or if that's a summer thing or something you want to share with people, dive into that. And some other great resources from SAMHSA. And then, boom, tons of stuff, right? So this one's from Castle, which talks about the 4 major things to come back to. This is the 3 signature cell practices I talked about. Excuse me. And then there are the different self-assessments about how to check in with how you're doing from yourself, so that you can get what you need. I think that's all she wrote. I did skip something. Oh, grief and loss. Oh, and there's some cool videos here. Yeah. So check out the videos whenever you want to. Tap in, tap out is a really great one. It's highlighted from Edutopia, I think. And it's from a trauma sensitive school, and it's very simple. It's just a text agreement that the staff all have, which is, when I need a minute, I'm going to text you and I'm going to say, I need to tap out, and somebody is going to come tap in. And that'll give me a second to actually pee or eat or get some water or do something, or like call the doctor or whatever it is I need to do, right? So it's just a nice little video of a method they call tap in, tap out. So I want to share that with folks in case you're looking for something to use with your team right here and now. Check in the tap in, tap out video. And then the only other piece was about grief and loss, just to acknowledge that depending on the community you're in, depending on the demographics of the community that you're in. If you are a community with a high BIPOC population, and if you're in a community that's had a high COVID rate, you have to talk about grief and loss, you have to make that a part of the conversation. And I'm finding that a lot of folks are shying away from talking about bereavement and loss and grief and loss. So please know that when we're talking about all of this, it would be great to always bring in those kinds of counselors or those kind of support networks, because you can't do this work and then skip that. I mean, I have a very small department, and out of my department, I've had a handful of folks get COVID and then actually lose family members to it already. And I have a very small department. And so we're going to have to do that work. So we got to make sure we can talk about it. So not to end, I do want to make sure I say it and don't just skip over it. So I'll leave it on this picture though, so that you can all think about what your meaning making is going to be. And I'm going to stop there and look at my time. Yeah. And from this, I'm going to say, what is the piece right now that is jumping out to you and making you say, that's it. That's the thing that tomorrow I'm going to share with a colleague. I'm going to share with a supervisor. I'm going to share with a friend, and throw it into the chat or unmute yourself, whatever is easier and accessible for you. I'll read whatever's in the chat out loud. I'm actually going to stop sharing so that I can see everybody's faces. All right. Want to slide so I can digest them. Marianne's on that, right?
I am totally on that. Everyone will receive a recording and a slide. Brilliant. And the link to the slides.
All right, the 3 R's. Nancy's going to focus on regulate, relate, and reason. Brilliant. Joanne is going to be okay with scaling back. Not only being okay with scaling back, but actively identifying what is going to be intentionally removed from the plate. Right, Joanne? Yes. Yes. Regulating emotions. Yep, Yasmin, absolutely. Being open to asking for help. That's okay to do so as long as all kids leave with 10 fingers and 10 toes. We had a good day. Always, always. Talk about the SEL with staff first, kids second. Yep, 2 comes before 3. 2 comes before 3. Reduce workload, getting realistic expectations of what can be accomplished. Yep, because everybody is working with a compromised brain system and body. Tremendously. Absolutely. Absolutely. Optimistic closure. So an optimistic closure that I'm going to ask you all before you head out is, what's one thing you're really proud of yourself for this year? Because I got to practice what I preach, right? Sleep. Sherry's been practicing sleep. I would be really proud of that too. That's been elusive for me. So Sherry, kudos. Proud of successfully moving to a new state. Laura, I am very proud. Tap in, tap out. Sharon, cutting down on extra workload and focusing on what can be done and accomplished. Brilliant. Advocating for self when the workload is too much and unreasonable. Yes. Proud of being there for my students, but outside of work, working on my painting. Oh, nice. Giving myself permission to take some time to myself. Yes. Absolutely, Jennifer. So glad you were here. I'm proud that I'm working hard on recognizing what I've accomplished as opposed to all the moments I've frozen. Yeah. If you actually start listing out all the things that you've done this year, folks, you will be amazed. You will be amazed. That's like your homework. You need to write down all the things that you've actually accomplished this year. Not letting the outside world take over. Yes, I had a virtual play production last week and 2 more set for the next 2 months. Incredible. 3 R's. Oh, yep. The moon meter and thinking of creating a bulletin board in the staff room. I'm proud of handling school, work, being a wife, a 2-year-old mom, and a dog mom. I hear you. My 2-year-old's downstairs. I can hear him like giggling. So I feel the 2-year-old mom thing in a pandemic. Holy moly. Proud of working in person with students. Nancy. Whoo. I'm proud of you too. And grateful. Very true. I'm proud of implementing virtual small groups. Oh, Emily, that's excellent. And seeing real achievement. Kimberly, I'm grateful that I'm able to be here now. Me too. Anything else folks would like to share? We're your cheerleaders. We will celebrate you and love on you and see you and validate you. Marianne, what are you proud of?
I'm actually proud of learning how to sit down all the time. Being a teacher is about being on my feet, and I've learned how to patiently sit. It's not easy. Not easy at all.
It isn't.
No. This has been a wonderful presentation. I really appreciate you coming here and because we're here. We're all here together, which is, you know, lovely to see faces, and such a gift that everyone we can see faces and see reactions and wonderful inspirational chat. Is there anything you want to say at the end here?
A couple more people shared things that they're proud of, and I want to be a cheerleader, right? So being a divorce and doing in-person preschool. Thank you. Those preschoolers, we need that early on. Took the time to be in the group, taking time for me. I needed this. Yes, I'm so glad you took the time for you. Angela Marie, absolutely. Thanks, team. That's it. And you have my contact info, and there's a SEL website for all stuff that I put online. So don't be strangers. Ooh, proud of learning how to do online counseling with children with autism. Wow, Lauren. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm proud of helping students virtually and help students who need any extra challenge. Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. I just put in the chat something, we have another event on Thursday. I just want to share with people, since I know we have some early childhood educators on this meeting, which is supporting diverse learners in the time of COVID. It's part of our innovations in early childhood. And it's also free, and there are going to be practitioners coming to talk about working with children with varying abilities and varying language needs, and kind of what that means, what that looks like in an early childhood classroom. So if you're dying to be on Zoom again, please please sign up. It will also be recorded and posted, linked through the CAPS website on Lesley. We're just amazing. We're just so blessed to have such talented people to work with. And I'm just so appreciative of this, Sarah. It's really been a fantastic evening. So thank you.
I love you all, and I want you all to have your gas mask, your masks on. Nobody passed out in the first aisle. Not happening. Not on my watch. Thank you all for being here. Go eat something, hug your fur babies and human babies, and something that brings you joy tonight.
Yeah. Put your head in the fish tank, right?
Thank you. Marianne,
Thank you
can you
so
put
much.
the link in the chat box one more time? It's not working.
Oh, yes, I can. Just a link to here we go. I'll put it.
The link for, what is it, Thursday session with early childhood? I can send it to a friend.
Okay, did it work this time? There we go. Probably just disappeared. Yeah, I think it's there. Good.
It's still saying not meeting host. Is that an actual link that would only work for 4:30, or is it a link to register? Because it's saying not meeting host.
Oh, it's a link to register. Who's talking? Who's talking?
It's Fabiola talking.
Okay, it's okay. Hey, Fabiola, I will send it to you directly, okay? And I'll send it out. I'll send a follow-up with everybody. I can do that. I'll send the slides tonight and a thank you, and I'll include the flyer for this. How about that?
Thank you.
Perfect.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. It was great.
Thank you. Marianne, can you save the chat? You can end the recording now.
Oh, yeah.